Well, hello all you internet watchers. If you're like me, you're on YouTube or LinkedIn or wherever you might be watching this, uh, looking for tips and hints. So in this case today I want to talk about septic pumps, and I want to show you what's happening here at my house. So I live on an acreage, and it's common every few years that you're going to have to change your septic pump. So I didn't try to clean up the scene here. I just not done to impress anybody. This is the reality of what it is when you have a septic problem. So let's have a look and I'll show you what I got here. Okay, so you can see here I've pulled the old pump out. You can see how much corrosion and so on is on the top of that pump. Pump still hums, but it doesn't turn. I may be able to get it working again, but you know what? It's just not worth the effort to try to get it to work, because it might only work for a month or less. So what I want to show you today is a couple of things that you can do to make your life simpler. So first of all, we got a beautiful warm day here. I think it's going up to about 27 Celsius. So it's not that unpleasant to do this job today, but it's still a lot of work. You can see I got tools strewn all over the place. I got my pressure washer out because I wanted to wash the pump off so I can get it apart without making a mess all over everything. And I've put the new pump together, put the hose on. So the key to doing this job easily, or more easily, it's not a pleasant job no matter what you do, but the key to doing it more easily is to have a quick disconnect. So that's what I have here. I've got a quick disconnect, so that all I do is I reach down inside the tank. This is some insulation on it that I use. First of all, when I discovered my problem, my tank was full right to here, almost to the top. So fortunately for me, I've designed this system with backwater valves, check valves, and it never comes back in the house. The toilet won't flush, and that's the first thing you notice. Lazy flushing toilet, so then I come out and I check it. Now I should have a float switch in here, but I don't. Like an alarm switch, I should say. But I would recommend one. Everyone should have that. I have some extra floats. I'm going to probably put a light bulb back here. I used to have a light bulb. So if the tank gets above its normal level and the float turns upside down, it opens the switch turns on a light, and you say, oh, there's something wrong with my pump because the water level is higher than it should be. Okay, I want to stop for a second, and I want to talk about something else that I never thought to talk about at first, but that is safety. I think you need to be careful that you understand what you're dealing with here. Sewer gases are, they'll kill you. Do not do something stupid like climb in the tank without protection. If you are going to be in the tank, make sure you have helpers and so on, and make sure the tank's been flushed. There's no reason why you should have to get in the tank if you're doing it the way that I do it. And just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. You know, as Shania Twain would say, don't be stupid. And you can't plan for stupid. You know, your family loves you, so don't climb in that tank. I'm telling you. So that's one thing. You can see I've pumped this out. I've used some flexible line, and I have an extra pump that I have on hand. So for this type of thing, if you live on an acreage, you're going to experience these problems. So again, we got a quick disconnect. So I just reach down in there, I open that up, and then I just pull that pump out, and I disconnected the hose, put it on the new pump, and now I'm about ready to put the new pump back down in. I'll reconnect it and I'll run it, and it should be good. And this pump lasted me 6 years. That's something else I might point out. And it'll be controversial. Some people will disagree with me, and that's okay. I go by experience. I don't go by what people say all the time. My experience is this mediocre pump lasted me 6 years. I could have bought a pump that was 4 times the price. I think I paid $60 for that pump. This pump's $179. That's inflation for you. But I've bought pumps that were $900 in the past, in the last 2 years. So, you know what, I think I'll stick with the cheap pumps and hope that I get the same use out of this pump. Well, bad news. Went down to check the pump out, water's not coming out. So now what? So now you have to make sure that, first thing I assume is the discharge line is plugged. And then I thought, well, I better check the pump just to make sure. Brand new pump, but the box was a little rough. And I thought maybe I'd get a little better deal if the box was damaged. I did, but apparently somebody returned the pump. It was busted. So you can test the pump just by, I can hear it humming. But it's not turning. So a lot of work for nothing. I have to take the pump back and buy another pump. Well, here we go with pump 2, round 2. We'll see how this one works. There's a couple of other things I want to point out to you. I want to show you a mistake I just made, and not really a mistake, but something I'm going to do again. And I think you should pay attention to these sorts of things. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so unfortunately I don't have a flashlight with me, but so you can see I've got the quick connect back together again. So the pump's ready to go. But what I discovered is, you can see the center wall here. My float is located up against the center wall over here. So that float won't be free moving to flip up and down when necessary. So if that float gets hung up on the wall, then the pump won't turn on, or it won't turn off. So either way, it's not good. It'll either burn the pump out or it'll flood. So I'm going to pull this back out again. I'm going to turn the bottom section so the pump is facing the other direction, so my float is out into the tank area. Now that's a fair bit of work to pull this pump back out again, but if I don't do it, it's going to be a lot more work later. So again, I often tell you to do them right the first time, so you don't have to do them 3 times at 3 times the expense. So I'm going to disconnect this, going to pull the pump out, going to spin the bottom around, make it a little bit tighter perhaps in the fitting, and that'll put my float on the correct side. The other thing I want to point out here is, if you notice, the pump is sitting on a block, and you want to put the pump up off the bottom of the tank on the dose side, because if you don't, then it'll suck solids up. And you can see this 1.5 inch line, it's not very big. If you suck up sludge in that line and it stays in the line, it could block the line. So you don't want to do that. So again, that's what I have for you now. And one other thing, I guess, we'll always make sure when you're lowering the pump or lifting the pump, you do it with the rope. Don't pull on the cords. They're just wires. They're not intended for that. And don't lift with the hose. Always lift with the rope. So good luck out there. Nasty job, but somebody's got to do it. And if you do it yourself, it's hundreds of dollars less than if you hire somebody. Okay, a few final thoughts here. You can see now that the float is out away from the wall and it has free action. I've made sure that the power cord doesn't get tied into the way, that the ropes are not in the way. It's free moving. So let's talk a little bit about electrical. So what I've done here with the electrical, I've done 2 things. First of all, I've taped it and I've broken a little piece of the curb away so that when I put the lid back on, it doesn't crush my electrical. Bare wires rubbing together are going to burn your pump out or just cause it to shut off and, of course, cause a flood. I've also taped, I got to replace the plug there, by the way, some of you will notice that, but I have taped my float and my power switch in so that there's no way that can move. I'm going to put a pail over that to keep that dry, close that top piece. Also, I'm assuming through all of this that anybody I'm trying to help here will know that the pump is burnt out and not have a problem with the float. So, as you know, this is your power cord, and this one is the float switch. So I always keep the float switch because they're handy. They're handy to have. So that still works in my case. I can run the pump with power directly and the pump just hums, it doesn't turn. So I know it's got nothing to do with the float switch. So keep your float switch. Use it for activating a light for a high-level alarm, for instance, like I have done and will do in the future. And make sure your electrical connections are intact. Make sure they stay dry. Make sure they stay plugged in. I have seen situations where a cat rubs on the cord on a deck, knocked it loose, caused the tank to fill up, and flooded a basement. So avoid these little things that you can avoid. You can see I'm filling the tank again with the garden hose from the well, and it's almost to the point right now where it's going to pump. Over here. So you can see that pump float is in good position there. Nothing obstructing it. Now I'm going to walk down where the pump out comes out, and I'm going to check that out and make sure we've got water coming out the other end. As soon as I hear that pump kick in, it should pump for about, should dose out about 60 gallons of water at a time. That's what you really want. You don't want that float so short that it is not pumping properly. So I'm going to go down and make sure that it's coming out the other end. So when the tank overflows into the dose side over this center wall here, and get zoomed in. So when it comes over the center wall, all that sludge and debris and so on can come over into this side and get pushed into this here, but hopefully it didn't. Essentially the reason it comes over the wall is the pump has failed, so the pump shouldn't be pumping any of the solids, but there are solids now in the bottom of the dose side, so hopefully they get diluted and they don't get pushed into the big chunks of them, don't get pushed into the discharge line that goes to your pump out, or you might have a field. Same idea. Okay, so here it is, pumping out. So that's good news. That tells me the line's not plugged off. So ideally at this end of the line you want to make sure that the line is able to drain either this way or drain back. You don't want it to be laying flat where it can freeze. I got to do a bit of work to this before fall time, but it's working. Yippee! Okay, I think we have success. Well, almost success. Something bothers me about these new pumps, they don't make the cords long enough, so therefore you have to make a connection inside the tank. And you should try to avoid doing that if you have the option. Try to make sure all your electrical connections are outside the tank. So this is just a temporary for me today, just to make sure that everything's working. But I will be putting a waterproof wrap on this as best I can, try to conceal this electrical connection inside the tank. I don't have any other choice. The cord's not long enough otherwise. I like to think of myself as an acreage expert because I've had all these issues. Everyone has these issues if you live on an acreage. And I happen to be the guy that fixes things around here, so I experience them firsthand. And they're messy, but you can do it yourself if you know what you're doing. And again, plan ahead, put the disconnect in if you have to change the pump, so that it's a quick and easy. Otherwise you have to pull this out, kink the pipe. It's a mess. And then, you know what? This generally doesn't happen in the summertime. Almost always happens in the wintertime. Usually Christmas Eve. I'm being facetious, but that's been known to happen. So prepare ahead, do your preventative maintenance, and hopefully you keep your water out of your basement.